What's up, y'all? Welcome to my podcast where I'm pushing positivity, purpose, and peace to all student athletes because I believe with these 3 Ps, you will not only find success in your sport, but you will find success overall in your life. My mission is to motivate, inspire, and add value to student athletes in hopes that y'all will not only become better players, but you'll become better people. If this content is helpful to you, I would love if you could rate this EP on whatever streaming app you're tuning in from. If you're watching on YouTube, I would love if you could like, comment, subscribe, or even share it with the athlete or coach that you know needs this. I love y'all, and I know you're gonna get something good out of this today. Until next time. All right, y'all, welcome back to my podcast where I'm pushing positivity, purpose, and peace to all student athletes to help y'all overcome adversity in sports and in life. This is part 3 to how to be a successful student athlete in college. And we were talking about all things finance. On the pod, we got Percy Etheridge. He is a branch manager at a financial institution, and he's going to just give us some tea, give us some tips on how we as athletes can manage our money with NIL and all the things that are being added to our student athlete life that can make it even more complicated. It's essential that we steward this area well so we can steward our other areas well. So Percy, I'm so glad to have you on the pod. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here and get the opportunity to help educate and bring some knowledge to our student athletes, especially with a lot of the exposure of the NIL deal and having finances in college. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Before we start, I think what's really cool outside of what people do for work is who they are. So I wanted to start off with a couple icebreaker questions. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so these are a little silly, but the first icebreaker question is cereal a soup? Why or why not?
I say not because I feel the soup is hot and cereal is cold.
Okay, so
And the
nobody ever
component.
eats cold soup?
I feel a component in soup is more with base and what you need versus cereal's milk.
Right.
Usually,
Okay,
so
okay, okay. So
usually
milk,
you have some type of stock.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So what if you put chicken broth on some Fruit Loops? Is it still cereal?
Well, you have Fruit Loop soup, I think.
Right. Right. Okay. So our next icebreaker, what is a superpower that you would want?
Superpower that I would want would be, um, I would say, you hear background?
No.
You good? Okay. I would say it would end up being super speed.
Super speed?
Super speed or flight. Those are my two.
Being able to fly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get the super speed because it's not just for running. It's like I can make, food really fast or I can
correct.
do the dishes really fast. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Correct. I can still get to A to B quick, just as if I was flying. The only difference with flying is I'm afraid of heights. So
Dang it.
that's why.
Right. So that's a superpower that maybe you got put on the back burner.
Correct.
To be
Absolutely.
scared as you're flying. That's so funny. Wow. Okay. Well, cool. Cool. Let's get into a little bit more of who you are, more of an overview. Could you tell us a little bit of your background, how you developed your passion for sports? You play football right now,
Correct.
right?
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So first off, shout out to my minor league football team. I actually am a part founder of this team.
Okay.
And we play nationally. So we ended up winning our championship this year. So it's very exciting. I have two now in the bucket.
Yep.
Um, and I've been playing since high school. I played when I was in Europe in Germany. My mom was military, so we played out there on base. and then ended up coming to Washington. I played with Rogers High School
Okay.
on the
Okay.
football squad,
Yep.
and then from there wanted to proceed to go through college and go that route,
Hmm.
and looking for ways to get sponsorship out there,
Right.
because we were a little bit in a different type of tier for our family. So I wanted to get some
Absolutely.
sponsorship, but ended up working. And next thing you know, I'm in finance, and that's kind of something that's been my area of expertise and a passion of mine.
Yep.
And football became something I can do on the side, for
Got
as a hobby.
got you. So would you say I heard you briefly mention your family upbringing. Would you say that's what kind of drove your passion to get into finance and kind of create a different future, or when did that desire kind of flourish?
It actually flourished when I was already working in the institution.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great mentor who ended up telling me to do something that you love.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I love money and I loved people. And
Hmm.
so he told me, try working at a store or a bank. And I was like, bank, let's do it. And I wanted to actually break the mold of what banking was. And I know it was typically those in a suit coming in and they had, education, master's degrees, bachelor's, and just really wanted to find a way to break that mold. And so I wanted to enter in that world of finance and jumped in. And then learning more about it made me get the passion to want to help financial literacy for the communities.
Absolutely. And what was interesting is when I was doing research on student athletes and where they're at with financial literacy, it was interesting to see that a lot of student athletes wanted more financial literacy, especially because they're getting more money, but even without the NIL, right? At students in general coming into college, they may be experiencing more money than they're used to managing, even if you're getting a loan, right? Let alone a scholarship or stipend or NIL. So what was also interesting is that student athletes had a hard time applying the knowledge they were getting. So, how important is financial literacy and how did you learn to obtain it?
Absolutely. I feel financial literacy is extremely paramount when it comes to a part of your education because it's a catch 22, right? To become eligible for good credit risk and to get into the credit world, you have to actually have debt. And to have debt, you have to be able to be approved to get debt. So it's
Mhm.
kind of a full circle that connects the dots. Um, and it can really start from a parent aspect, but if you're never at that point when you're in college to where your parent or your guardian was able to help with that piece,
Yep.
then you're able to arm yourself. And that's really, my goal is to help whether you're 16, 12, or you're 37, 42, arm yourself in that education so that you're able to be prepared going forward.
Absolutely. I know when I first went to college, like my spending habits were trash. And I didn't even think they were trash. I thought it was okay to be at the end of my semester and have like $10 in my account, because I made it. I made it to my semester and I'm gonna get another check. And I think that's the pattern with a lot of student athletes, um, from experience and then what studies are showing. Um, but what it seems is financial education can help change our behaviors, right? So just off the top of your head, what are like a few things that student athletes can do to change their financial behaviors that don't benefit them?
I would say the one of the biggest ones I always add in
Yeah.
is self-control. That's probably the biggest. When you think of the high-end athletes who are getting a significant amount,
Yep.
but education. is a big piece in your behaviors. So wanting to know more about the finance world, the literacy, not just credit, but banking, how banking works, financial planning, how that works as well. Creating a budget, what that looks like for yourselves. And then the second thing I would say, behavior wise, is seeking out a support.
Yep.
I feel some individuals think they got it themselves, but when you have a support, whether it's your mom, your dad, someone who's been through the same scenario, a mentor, a financial planner, a
Yep.
tax advisor, right? Those ranges start to grow and connect the dots. The more amount of assets or the more amount of earnings that you're getting,
Yep.
it starts to grow. And so, really making sure that the behavior on wanting to get that support is there and getting that financial education. So those are kind of both big things that I feel.
Absolutely. And with self-control, until you actually work that muscle of self-control, which a lot of athletes have to a certain degree, right? Because they made it to that next level.
Yeah.
But when it comes to finance, right, you need accountability. Like as athletes, when we work hard, we have someone holding us accountable, whether it's our parents, our coach. And until you work that strength in your finances, you need like a financial advisor. You need someone that's going to say, hey, do you really need this? Or do you really need to eat out, 5 times a week? Or can you make some spaghetti? Like, can you get in the
Yeah.
kitchen and chef it up? You know what I mean?
Right.
And when I was doing research, it was funny because it said most athletes, and this study was done in Power Five schools. It said most athletes spend their money on food and transportation. That's funny because most athletes get that support. They're not
Yeah.
like they're not having to drive everywhere. We have transportation to all our games. And a lot of us we get food. So it is that self-control because it's like how are you stewarding the food that's available to you? Like do you got to be bougie all the time or can you just eat the dry rice, and put some salt on it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um and I
They,
think
they
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and I think what's hard too is, which I'm sure you've experienced being a financial advisor, is like spending money could be a vice to hurt or pain or frustration. And as a student athlete, like you have so much that you're carrying and you're battling with. And it feels good to go buy a pair of shoes. It feels good to go spend your money on some food. And I think to a certain degree, that's okay, but you got to do what's in your budget, right? So how do you go about helping people become aware of what's best for their lifestyle and their money?
it's for me it's creating a budget.
Yeah,
And that's where you can identify the amount of earnings that they're bringing in and how they're using those earnings in their daily life. And that's how you really connect those dots. I talked a lot about the 50-30-20 rule,
Mhm.
which 50% is going to be your needs,
Okay.
30% is going to be your wants, and 20% is going to be your savings. Now, there's room for Notion to kind of adjust 20% for wants and 30 for savings.
Right,
Um, and for myself, the 50% need is going to be utilities, housing, transportation. When you think of food, groceries instead of
right,
restaurants and eating out.
right,
So those are going to be those tidbits in your needs, and then you're going to allocate 30% to your wants. So yes, if you want to get those shoes, you can because 30% is shopping,
right,
entertainment,
right,
restaurant,
right,
travel, and then
right.
20% is going to be your savings, your investments, your retirement, your emergency funds, any debt that you have to help put towards that. Those are where that's going to be allocated towards. And so if you're following that guideline, again, making the minor adjustments for it as well, that's going to help you start to set yourself up for success for your future, which is going to help when things like the NIL deals come into play or any endorsement, anything to take place, even just a job, is going to really help you manage that. And you're going to know where you can spend things at and where you're at financially.
So true. So it's the awareness that you need. You can't change what you're not aware of. So
Absolutely.
getting that flexibility. I love how you said in the budget, you can say, oh, I'm spending a lot here and here, and this is really how I need to allocate my money. And having that set 30%, like this is where I could do what I want. Like I can go to the movies, I can buy the shoes because I budgeted for it the past couple months. Um, I think that can help student athletes feel a little bit more agency in how they spend, but not like totally derail their finances.
Correct. I know there's those who want to save every little penny. I understand you do your thing, but you have the freedom to be able to, spend a little bit, if you have it. That's part of life. You want to be able to do that. I've again, this passion really took place when I was in the banking world, and while being in it, I've had clients who, there are some that were actually athletes, right, for NFL. I've had doctors, I've had people who work in construction. I have them in all different, walks of life and different job opportunities. And for me, that thing is gone. It's a lot of literacy that's not really being utilized or talked about, even just about banking itself and how it works in that space. And so that's where I want to take place. I'm a board member for Pierce County, to really help businesses out there as well. A board member for a nonprofit in Seattle, called Youth in Focus, to help those youth as well, to grow their knowledge in that space and getting out into the community. And so what's happening here is just phenomenal, and how we can continue to help these athletes understand what it looks like. I think we're going to set them up for future success when they get into college, to where they can even educate others, or even help, parents can help start them early, or they can get into a place where they're not stuck or looking to say what happens, because in the world of sports, it's uncertain of what happens during that time. So we also don't want to make sure we're planning for future earnings that's not there yet.
That's so good. I love that you said that because your passion bleeds into my passion for doing this episode. And like I mentioned before, NIL kind of made it even more paramount to me, but without that, just getting into more money. I love the quote, if you can't handle a little thing, you can't handle the big things. That is so true. And I think sometimes we get in this illusion like, oh, if I have more, then I'll give more. I'll do this more. I'll steward my money better. It's like, no, if you can't manage $100 well, you're not going to be able to manage $5,000 well. And in my student athlete experience, me personally, seeing how I didn't have the budget and the self-control and being put in a pickle when I'm a D1 athlete and I shouldn't be in that, or seeing my peers with the NIL kind of living a lifestyle that isn't sustainable for where they're at because sports is so uncertain, and not having that prudence of like, okay, this is what I have. How can I make this money work for me? How can I create, okay, this is what we need to talk about. Emergency money. Let's talk about that. What do you think is an adequate amount or a percentage that should be put to emergency? Because a lot of athletes in college, their emergency is their mom and dad. So
Yeah.
how do we get mom and dad off the hook and start being responsible with our money?
It goes back to the budgeting rule. Some people say, hey, at least 10%.
Okay.
I say 20 for me and myself. I do tithe, and so 10% goes there. But when you think about really how to save and do all of that, depending on how much you're getting, you want to definitely put 20% towards that, because in banking and in everyone's accounts, there's a percentage, I believe it's in the high 60s, 70s, that does not even have, $2,000 in a savings account for emergencies or for backup, right? And that's a large amount when you really think about it. And so with that thought being in mind, how can I make sure that that's happening? So I always say allocate about 20% towards that. because you're also thinking things of any earnings you're getting, it's also taxable, right? So I'm not a tax advisor, but being able to understand what that really means, or even just having that thought that, okay, this is still taxable. I still have to claim this during taxes. Having that savings, if you make a certain amount, may have to pay back in taxes. So making sure that you take 20% of that instantly as soon as you get an earning, that's that behavior, that habit that you want to build in to take that, put it up. Some people put it in accounts where they don't see it. Some people put it in, high yield accounts. They put in things where at least the money's still earning something as well while it's sitting, and then going that way. So your money's growing, you're saving, but you're making sure you're allocating any earning that you get, a percentage of that going towards your savings account. That's probably the first thing you want to do every single time. And then from there, you have the money that you can allocate towards rent or your needs, and then those towards some fun.
Right, absolutely. So if I'm hearing you, you're saying it's kind of best in the beginning. Once you get the paycheck, take it out, put it to the side, right?
Correct. You know that notion where, okay, I'll do it later, or hey, that next check, I'm gonna add more to it. It's the same thing that happens in credit, right? Hey, I'm gonna pay that back next time, since it's always borrowed money when you think of credit. So it's better to make sure that you build that behavior to do it now, so then you're used to that happening. And some places, whether student athletes, they're working while also getting NIL deals. They can also allocate a percentage of their check to automatically go into a different account as well. So some jobs are able to help them do that. Employers will do that for them. But that's the first thing you want to do. That's one of those huge behaviors. And that's where I talked about that behavior and self-control. They
Yep.
can manage that piece to it. That's going to help them. And again, with the support of family or the support of an advisor or support of a mentor, I think that's going to help continue that behavior to make that happen.
Absolutely. When you started talking about credit, it made me want to ask you, what is the best mindset to have when thinking about using credit?
That's a part two. No,
Right?
when you think of
No,
credit,
it could be. Yeah.
there's a whole
Bro.
world in credit, and that's another piece, especially when you're looking at those in NIL deals who are getting, five figures, six figures, and it starts to jump up. What does that look like, really and honestly? And when people look and think about credit, each one are going to be different, whether you're thinking of like a credit card, that's an open line of credit. And when you look at getting a car or a home, those are fixed credits. Those are fixed loans. So those are things that you know what you're paying at the same time, versus a credit card is an open line of credit. So even after you pay it off, it's still open for you to use. Either way, it's borrowed money. So when you're borrowing money, when it comes to credit, you want to look at things as, if I have the money to do it, when you think of a credit card, then I'm going to go ahead and I can use my credit cards if you get reward points, things like that. So now you're making money on top of those rewards, but you're still paying back. If you're using $100 already on gas, might
Right.
as well use a credit card. And then when that balance show up, just use that $100 you were going to use anyway towards that credit card. So now you're back at zero and you got the reward points for it. Credit is just borrowed. It's for those who don't have the liquidity, so the actual money in their account to pay for it or pay it off. Homes, getting cars, so vehicles are going to be a huge thing. If you're running a business and you want to, you got to allocate and get some funding for your business to help start up. Those are going to be kind of those big purchases. And to get those big purchases, they have to see that you're um, a good credit risk to lend out more money. And that's why you start with a credit card or a secured loan. And so the way I want people to think about it as a student athlete is to go, it is borrowed money. In the beginning, think about it as starting early on being prepared and showing that you can handle credit
Right.
responsibly, so that when you get to a point where you want to buy a home or you want to get a vehicle, you're eligible to be looked at as a good credit risk.
That's so good because I mean, if you have bad credit, it really makes it difficult for you, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Correct.
what are some ways that bad credit could prohibit you in life?
Again, so bad credit. So no credit is actually better than bad credit because you're brand new, but bad credit really shows that you're irresponsible with your finances. It could be things of not paying on time, things sent to collections. Those things would play a part in bad credit, and that will drop your score. And there's three credit bureaus, and they all have their own grading and how they rate with their scoring based off of different things, whether it's payment history, outside debt, new credit inquiries, the time that you've had debt as well. That's really played a part in how long you've had good credit or bad credit. And those are things that can hinder you in getting a vehicle or getting a home. Those things can hinder you and get to a point where um, now you're stuck and you need to get something happen, or you have an emergency and you didn't have the funds for it. Things like that will look into a place of what that really looks like. And so bad credit will definitely hinder you from being able to get the purchases that you need. And a
Yeah.
lot of people think, hey, if I make $1 million, I can go buy a $600,000 house and go that route. Amazing. That's actually great. But there's going to be a point in time where credit's going to come back around, and you're going to want it or you're going to need it. And if you don't have it, then now you have to start from scratch and build that credit back up, so that they can look at it as a good credit risk. So those are some of those things that I look at where you want to make sure you avoid that. It's not impossible to get out of it. um, I always tell people bankruptcy is one of those things you don't want to do because that does stick to your credit. But everything else, if it's bad credit, you can always turn that back around and be able to pay those bills, get out of collection, or continue to pay on time. And that will help continue that. You can still get a vehicle with bad credit, but when you
Okay.
think of that, your interest rate may be higher. So getting a vehicle at 20,000, now your interest rate could be 16%, versus if you have great credit, it could be 9%, 8. Some institutions can go even lower, based off of the relationship you have with that institution. So that plays a big difference on what you're paying back too.
Absolutely. And can you briefly expand on interest?
Interest. So interest is going to be money earned by the institution. And them lending you back, you're paying back more. You lend out 100, and you have interest on that. Well, at the end of whatever time amount that you allotted for to pay back that loan, you're paying additional interest on top of that towards them because they lend you money. So it's them getting the money for it. So you end up paying $110 back. So when you look at interest, when you're having large purchases, a difference between a mortgage at 3.1 versus a mortgage at 7% is huge. That's the difference between thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that's something huge that you want to also look at, making sure you have that good credit because the interest rate will factor in on what you're paying back that financial institution or that creditor that you're working with. So,
Absolutely. I love that. I love that you said that because, well, one, people may not know how interest works
yeah,
and the importance of how leveraging your credit can save you money, right? It can cause you to have less of a headache in the future. So, um, I really appreciate you expanding on that. Is there any other tips that you could think of that would be important for student athletes today?
uh, yeah, I had a couple things that I really made sure that I put on was seeking professional assistance. Um, or support. That's a huge thing because, again, student athletes are going through a lot, not only with what their schedule looks like while still maintaining what they're doing in school with their grades, while even doing things like endorsements and everything to that manner. That's all huge. And to put a strain and saying my finances, when I say look for support, it's not just anybody, right? You want to really make sure that you got the right person in place because there are people out there as well that want to help you with your money, but also want to benefit for themselves. And so you want to really look at a lot of different factors instead of saying, okay, this person's going to help me with this. Now that's off my plate. I'm not going to worry about it. But you still want to make sure you're actively involved. And when you think of, I'm a football person. So when you think of your finances, you're still the quarterback in your finances. So you still want to make sure that everything is to a T and you're checking your accounts and you're checking contracts and things like that. So that's going to be a huge thing. What I say is basic education about finances is going to be huge. Those who are looking to invest with their money, um, I say it's more strategically smart to do so for those athletes who are on the high end scale of that. If you're still in that realm of a few thousand here and there, you don't need to go and put money into stocks or go and get a financial advisor. Um, you want to graduate to that. And to be able to graduate to that, it's continue to seek out earnings on what you're doing and what you love to do, whether it's getting a job or continue to get deals and things like that. So that's where I would say start to go towards that route when you get to a dollar amount where you're going, okay, I'm saving enough, I'm making enough, but I also want to be able to find another source of income to really benefit from that. So those are kind of some of those things I want
Yeah,
to put into place. Um, if you do invest, diversify your investments, set up emergency funds. You want to make sure you do that as well. So it's going to be huge. Um, and last is going to be creating a budget, and that's going to be probably your start. So get started early, create that budget, know what's coming in, and then don't set yourself up for any future earnings because again, in the world of sports and how everything works, it's uncertain. And so you don't want to prepare yourself for future earnings that may not come. And now your plans are a little bit different than what you thought they were. So go based off of what you know is already in and
yep.
what you have.
That's so good. That's so good. Thank you so much for being on the pod today. I know people are going to get something out of this if they watch it. So thank you again. This was a lot of information, but a lot of good information. So thank you for your time.
Yeah.
And
I want to add one last thing because I got to, in the respectful world of um, my occupancy in banking,
Mhm.
make sure you do put your money in banks. I want to say that because I know people want to carry cash around. I know that's the cool thing, but make sure you do put it in the bank because your money is also insured, and it's insured up to $250,000. Um, and so I really want to make sure that people put their money into a bank so that it's protected as well. No cash, things like that. You can have play around, money going around, but make sure you put it in the bank or credit union and go that route and understand what that looks like. Ask questions when you're with a banker to know how to set yourself up.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, P. I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else, have questions, things like that. I hope we get another opportunity to dive in deeper. Um, and I might have to get my podcast on finance and go that route. But no, I'm just
Hey,
hey,
might as well. Might as well.
but I appreciate you for giving me this opportunity. I think what you're doing is going to be phenomenal. I think it's going to really pave a way for student athletes. This is something that I think is huge that you're doing for the student athletes because it's not only going to pave a way to help them be financially successful for their future endeavors, but it's going to um, help educate and tool them and arm them for the right type of finance literacy,
Hmm.
education piece on what to do with their deals, what to do with pressure. You're doing more than just the finance piece, right? You're being able to help advocate um, for the student athletes and how to be a successful student athlete or
Mhm.
student in general.
Right.
And when you look at everything else, people have their own things that they're doing. For me, I'm in the community, but what you're paving for is going to help them in their future. to help minimize what's been happening, with
Yeah.
bad financing or with pressure under um, working out and going to classes and their schedule, and you're just going to be able to open up a whole world for them to be successful. And I think it's going to start with those who are in high school when they're looking in your
Yeah.
podcast and going, okay, what am I going to be set up for going
Right.
to college? What do I need to do?
Yes.
And this is going to be a great educational um, entertainment tool that you're able to utilize because we're keeping it real, we're
Yeah.
keeping it honest, and we're helping the youth
Yeah.
grow, get to
So,
where they need to go. So I appreciate what you're doing. It's phenomenal, and I know every youth student out there are going to be exceptionally honored to be able to have you have this idea and bring this to life. So we appreciate you, Nia. Thank you so much for having me once again.
yep.
Um,
Thank you for
and
being on. Thank you for
yeah,
being on. I appreciate it.
it's an honor. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, all right, y'all. That was the end of the pod. Hope you enjoyed it. This was amazing. And yep, we just getting better.
Get better.
Amen.